right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today in a very busy week. What I'm assuming it's been a very busy week for us over at Higher Learning Advocates. A busy but fun week. My name is Tanya Eng, and I'm Managing Director of Advocacy here at Higher Learning Advocates. One of the things that has made this week so fun and exciting is that we were finally able to get the second student parent resolution making September National Student Parent Month through the Senate earlier this week. So it is officially in law that we are celebrating our second student parent month, second annual student parent month. We obviously we've been celebrating before it actually became official, but we're very excited to have that happen. I'm also thrilled to have two amazing parents join us today on this event. We're very we have lots of conversations to discuss. Kimberly, right before joining, we're very thankful for both of you to join, but Kimberly had some extenuating circumstances that were challenging, and so we're very thankful for the two of you. As we love this month because it's a time to honor and the hard work and dedication of our parenting students, while also taking a deeper look on how to identify ways we can best support them from a federal and state level, as well as from an institutional level. The entire topic lies very close to me, as I too was a parenting student who gave birth to my son and was back in school the next week, was reading my books while I was in the hospital. So I definitely very much respect and appreciate the many challenges and plates that are being juggled by each of you as you're moving forward. So I would like to go ahead and move on and quiet myself and go ahead and introduce our two panelists. We have Jess and Kimberly. And why don't you two go ahead and share with us a little bit about yourselves. Jess, do you want to start, and then Kimberly will move on over to you?
Yeah, hi, my name is Jessica Pelton. I am a recent graduate from the University of Michigan, and I currently work at the Center for the Education of Women, plus at the University of Michigan, and advocating for student parents. And I have a 9-year-old daughter.
Hi everyone, my name is I am a student parent, a senior at the University of California in Berkeley.
Kimberly, we can't hear you. I'm not sure what's going on. We heard you at first, and then it got real quiet.
Can you hear me now?
You still sound distant. Can you see if you plug in see if your phone maybe got this? I'm wondering if it got disconnected from the computer. Now we can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's my earphones. I apologize for that. So I'm a student parent at the University of California, Berkeley. I am a single parent, sole parent to a 5-year-old daughter. I am I guess my identities are a first-generation college student, first generation to the States, woman of color, and a DSP student. And I think because it aligns so heavily with the research that I do and it impacts my life so much, I'm also a CalWORKs recipient, which is a big part of my experience as a student parent and also a big part of my research and the work that I do.
Great, and I definitely want to get into that research in a little while. But why don't you tell us about what drove you to go to school? You both had your kids by the time you started school, or did you start and then end up getting pregnant like throughout your education? Tell us a little bit about that process, like how you made the decision to go to school and the role your kids played in impacting that decision to go to school.
So I had my daughter before starting school. So I got pregnant at 19. I was a stay-at-home mom until she was 4.5. At the time, her dad was already a college student, and we had moved to Ann Arbor for him to attend the University of Michigan. And so he was talking to me about college, and my daughter had a lot of health issues, so I didn't really think it was possible. When I started to look into college, within like the same time frame, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So I just further thought it wasn't possible. And then the year later, I had thought, well, things are stable. They had been stable for a year. She was clear of cancer, like it was benign, but it's inoperable. So I just assumed like it would mean life is stable. I decided to sign up, and about 2 weeks after I signed up, she was scheduled for brain surgery. Instead of seeing it as a barrier, where like I did have advisors at the community college recommend I don't go to college. But instead of seeing it as a barrier, I used it as the reason to go, because she was really doubting how life could be normal with health issues. And so I wanted to show her, like, if I could go with all my barriers as a person like with ADHD and almost failed high school and getting pregnant young and being a stay-at-home mom and taking care of a sick child, like if I could do it, then she would be able to do it. So I started my college career for her and to inspire her that education is the most important thing. And she was really the reason I went. And I went from nearly failing high school to I graduated with honors. And I really think that was because I had her, and she was the reason I went. So it gave my education a purpose that I didn't have before.
That's amazing. How is she doing now?
She's good. She just got the news. So MRIs went from every 3 months to once a year. This past August, she got a 2-year milestone. So she does not have to return for 2 years. So it's very big for her, and it's a huge accomplishment because we didn't think it would happen for many more years. So she's feeling really good.
That is great news. I'm so glad. But yeah, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Kimberly.
Yeah, again, Jessica, you're an inspiration. And I apologize if I kept my daughter with me from school today. So she's here with me. So I apologize if I get interrupted throughout me speaking. So I actually was a student before I became a parent. My background is, I guess, just non-traditional in the sense where I had initially got accepted to Cal State Long Beach right out of high school. And then my mother, who is undocumented, lost her job a year in. And so I took an academic leave to work full time to pay her rent. So I was 18 and not living at home with her, but paying her rent. And then after she found a more stable job, my dad actually was struggling financially. They're divorced. So my dad was struggling. And so I went and helped him pay his rent. And then I decided to go back to community college in hopes of transferring back to Cal State Long Beach. And then I became pregnant. And so I was pregnant, interning, working full time, and going to school part time. And then I had my daughter, and I decided to go to school just full time to be able to transfer out to a 4-year university. I had her at the month of finals in May. And so after I gave birth, 2 days later, I took my finals. And after I had her, I struggled with food insecurity because I was paying rent to live with my dad. And I was also, again, the sole provider for myself and her. And so it was really hard navigating community college when you're starving and don't have any, your food stamps don't make it to the end of the month, and you're using your cash aid to supplement her formula. And I was also paying my mom to watch her at the time. And so I graduated with a 3.98 in honors. And I transferred to the University of Berkeley, moved 6 hours away from all family. Give me one moment, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I feel like it's appropriate that she's here part of the webinar as well. As we're waiting, Jess, can you talk to me about, like, that would have been really challenging to be navigating school, navigating your daughter having a brain surgery, all of those things. What was helpful for you in that process? Like, and I mean, maybe not a lot at the time, maybe it was just survival, but talk to us a little bit about what was helpful for you at that time.
I think one thing was, like, she was so inspired by like her dad and I being students, and it created this outlook on being a student for her that is like very positive and fun. And so she made the experience really fun. Like, she loves being like a Michigan kid, like a University of Michigan kid, and like getting to be part of the experience and things like that. So I think when she first got scheduled for brain surgery after I had like just applied, it was definitely intimidating of like, you know, things can go wrong in surgery, and it was to relieve her hydrocephalus. So like the tumor is still inoperable. She'll have a tumor for the rest of her life. So it wasn't like it was to take care of the tumor, it was just for hydrocephalus. And you know, we were having to deal with like the implications of hydrocephalus and what impacts that had on her. And then there's like the risk of the surgery can like basically revert itself. And so they drill a hole into a ventricle and it can heal and re-cause hydrocephalus. So like there was also the concern of like, by the time she's healed, she has another MRI. I'm starting classes, and this MRI could say it healed, we have to go back in. And like, what would that mean? So there's definitely like the concerns, but I think the big thing was I was an online student through the community college. So I didn't see my classes as the barrier or my daughter as the barrier. It was like, your child will always go to bed, and like I can do homework when she's asleep. So like I might be lacking a few hours of sleep, but it's manageable. So like thankfully nothing went wrong, but she was home with me because she was preschool aged. We pulled her out of preschool for the brain surgery and just didn't feel comfortable sending her back, not knowing what her future would look like. So we kept her home the whole time. And so I did exactly that. I would do homework from, 10 o'clock at night to 2 in the morning. I was a month ahead in all of my classes at all times. That way, if anything happened, I had 4 weeks of wiggle space. And I ended all of my semesters a month early, because when you're at a community college and you're doing the online classes, a lot of times they just unlock the whole class. So you can technically do as much as you're capable of doing on any given day, as long as like you're hitting your deadline. So I just hit my deadlines very early and I created that kind of leeway that I would have some room. So anytime she was dealing with health issues, it was like, oh, my next deadline's not for 4 more weeks. So that's fine. Like all the focus could be on her. There was no concerns over anything she was like going through, because things were handled on both ends. So I think I got really lucky that I was able to set it up that way, because I think if I would have been like in person, it would have posed way bigger issues. And like transferring to U of M and being in person, that is something I had to deal with. Like when the pandemic was approaching, my biggest thing was she gets sick all the time. She got like a rare parasite when I first started at U of M, like one that doesn't even happen in the United States. And I was like, how did, so she's the type of kid that like, if a sickness is around, she gets it. And so like, then the pandemic posed a lot of concerns. I was going to give up my education for it because I thought I would have to pull her out of public school. And in turn, we did end up doing that. She left school a couple weeks early because, you know, there were no answers. There was no safety net saying my child was going to be okay. There was nothing saying like she could be healthy through this. Like all the evidence at hand was a person like her definitely can die from this. So my biggest concern was I should not be at a university where I'm around 40,000 people. She should not be in a public school where she's around several hundred. And I was prepared to leave. But so the health things definitely have their challenges. And I think that is somewhere the pandemic helped me in the sense that I just got to be like home with her and away from those concerns. But yeah, it's had its own challenges. And I think it'll always have its challenges, but it made for a very unique student experience. And I'm just glad she's healthy and I graduated.
That is awesome. Yeah, for sure. I'm so thankful that it worked out that way for you. Kimberly, welcome back. Your daughter is welcome to join if she would like. But why don't we go ahead and go back to your story where you decided to move 6 hours away to go to UC Berkeley. Want to pick up there?
Yeah, and apologies again. They're doing construction right outside the building, the like family resource center. So there's a lot of noise going on. So I initially actually was going to go to UCLA because of the proximity to my home and being closer to kind of the community that I had back in LA. And Berkeley offered much more substantial financial aid, and they were covering my housing as well as my education. And so I just said, okay, we're moving 6 hours away. And so we came here to Cal. And I think a big motivation of mine to go to school was, again, going back to CalWorks. The first thing that my caseworker told to me was that I was a neglectful mother for going back to school, being that my daughter was a newborn. And he was resistant to giving me the services that I needed to go back. And so
really fast, CalWorks is like the state system that provides like food stamp, like all the like the finance.
Yes, so it's California's TANF, so the Temporary Assistance for Needy Family. Every state, I forget. I always say things from such a California lens. So every state has a social safety net TANF program, and California's is called CalWorks. And so when I was going into the CalWorks building to get my cash aid, my food stamps, my resources needed to go to school, my caseworker was just so resistant to it. And so I thought, this is actually the opposite reaction that you should be having. Usually we're called lazy welfare queens and that we're just, feeding off the system. And so the fact that I'm here saying, okay, I want to go back to school to better my chances for myself and my daughter, it was very much like, you're a neglectful mother. Also, when I took advantage of the therapy services that they had, I faced emotional abuse and kind of manipulation in that. So I just seen the whole system and how much backlash that I was receiving, or just how difficult it was to navigate it, that motivated me to do an honors thesis on it. And then the professor from the honors program and my sociology professor, she told me, this should be your niche. You need to go to four-year university and study this. And so I think having that person that believed in me, and also the experience, the backlash that I received from a program that was supposed to be helping me, and I think also always that's in the back of my mind is kind of a racism, and how as a brown woman, and especially a brown mother, I have to be perfect. Everything is going to be blamed on me. If something comes up that's completely out of my control, it's my fault. And I'm, again, a lazy welfare queen, and I'm this and I'm that, and I'm every stereotype under the sun. And so I've had to be perfect from day one. And I think that I will say that it was really hard for me because of how my pregnancy occurred and kind of the traumatic events that happened around it. It was really difficult for me to identify as a mother. So I will say that I don't think that I did go to school solely because I became a mom. I did it. Obviously, she was like an underlying motivation because I just know the research, the statistics of what happens when you don't go to school outside of being a mom, and that just gets doubled becoming a mother. I will say that other fears of the food insecurity I already faced before having her, housing insecurity, it was very fear-based as to why that was the motivation to go to school. Once in school, I think that motivation shifted. But I will say that I did have a very complicated relationship with being a mom and identifying as one, and the backlash that I received for being a mom and utilizing resources. And so, yeah, that was my reason why I transferred to UC Berkeley. And I will say that I've had a weird like flip of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I'm meeting these higher learning needs, but always suffering with my basic needs. And so it's just, I don't know, my experience with Cal has also been complicated. I'm very grateful for it, but I have received a lot of even just physical violence and retaliation because of the covert racism that we faced here at, a pretty affluent little city that the university's housing is placed in. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. No, I'm so glad that you shared all of that. I'm so sorry that that's what you've had to face. I think that there is something that you think of like from having I have 3 children, and my third one, I did face postpartum depression. And that's not even a conversation that we oftentimes have, even when we're talking about parenting students. But like those hormones are real. And then you add in traumatic experiences or whatever else might be coming from it. And that makes it challenging just to like take care of yourself and your baby, like to get out of bed, to take care of your child, let alone do all of these other things. And so I have no words, just because that's like, I'm literally speechless, because I'm so impressed that you were able to still like kind of push through and get to where you're at. And I think that one thing that continues to stand out in our conversation with the two of you is the motivation that both of you have had to succeed within higher education, to create better lives for yourselves and ultimately for your family, and to be that example for your children. My master's was finished with my daughter in the hospital, and her saying, "Mom, by the time you're done, I want you to have like finished it. Like, can you finalize your project?" And like that was like, I knew again, like just like I was like, it was that creating an example for her, for when she, like later on in life, and something she could look forward to when she got out of the hospital. And so I think that that motivation is a driving factor, but then it also can impede, like not to say motivation itself can impede it, but there's like so many things then that get in the way of trying to finish what you've started. And so Jess, can you talk a little bit about that? It looks like Kimberly probably went to go take care of her little one for a little bit. So
talk about like the challenge of
the
finishing.
challenges of just being like, yeah, what were some of the barriers you faced, and Kimberly, you're back. So what were some of, like, you've talked a little bit about the challenges with food insecurity. Has that changed since you've been at Berkeley, or is that still a challenge? And like, what are some of these other barriers that both of you have found that make it challenging to stay in school, or finish school?
So okay. I think so I want to give like the picture from both community college and UC Berkeley. So I think my food insecurity was a lot more dire at the community college level, because they're not the community college that I was at, which was Rio Hondo, they weren't as well funded as obviously an institution like UC Berkeley. So when I became a mom, actually at the same time, they were just opening up a food pantry. But a lot of their food pantry, especially in LA, the quality of food isn't, I mean, right? I hate the saying, but beggars can't be choosers. But at the same time, I couldn't sustain myself off of like, canned food that was nearly expired, or like just kind of raw noodles. Like it wasn't food that I can eat then and there. And that was the issue, was that I needed food like then and there, because I was having such a hard time like meal prepping. to take food because my daughter was born with the hip dysplasia. So she had hip surgery and was in a full body cast for about 3 months. And she suffered everything under the sun, from swallowing a penny, having like a full blown rash on her neck where her skin was just like almost like coming off just to the touch. She had, really bad colic. I didn't find out that she was allergic to the formula she was using until much later. And so it was just so chaotic on top of school. So a lot of the times, like even a basic sandwich was sometimes hard for me to make because I'd be running out the door. Like Jessica said, I'd put her to bed and then I'd be studying from 10 to 3. I'd get 2 hours of sleep and then I'd have to take a 2-hour bus ride to the community college that I was at. So it was just like, there's easy fixes that people say, right? Why don't you just meal prep? Why don't you just do this and just do that? And it's like, you don't think I thought of those things? Like people can't understand the extreme of what single parents go through. I mean, also, right, like dual households, but especially single parents where I'm one person doing it all. There's no handing it off. My mom would fortunately watch her so that I can go to school. But even then I was just in charge of everything. And so not having access to the pantry at the community college level, like there was moments where I was just going around the school, going around the different programs and seeing if they had granola bars in baskets, or like, going to the trees. Even sometimes they'd have like random fruit trees and seeing if I would find an apple there. Like I was really like rummaging around, especially at the end of the month when my food stamps were gone. And like, I, was at maybe $50 stretching it. And I had to buy 2 more formulas, which were $17 each. So I knew like, okay, I might have like $5 left until the next month. So it was just that intense. Once I came to Cal, I will say that I was shocked at like the change in culture around EBT and meeting basic needs. Like people were whipping out their EBT here like it was no big deal. And in LA, oh my God, the looks that I would get bringing out my EBT card. So it was just this weird transition where I'm like, people talk about this so openly. And the food pantries here, oh my goodness, like organic, foods and fresh produce and bread. Like it was mind-boggling. So I will say that it was a big transition and I suffered less from food insecurity. And then the pandemic hit and then all of the food pantries closed. And I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Getting to like the Sprouts, there was like almost a 30-minute line to get in. Like it just brought so many barriers. And I think I went from being food impoverished to having time poverty. Then it became, I can't hit all the food pantries and also go to my classes. I can't hit my food pantries because the wait was like 30 minutes to almost an hour with a 3-year-old that is losing her mind because she's been, stuck in in the house on lockdown for months. Like it was just so much going on. Fortunately, the institution being that it is, I reached out to all of the food pantries and I let them know my situation. And so they hired DoorDash to then drive food over to parents like myself that weren't able to go to the food pantries. So then I was getting, my meals. Then that stopped because apparently like the pandemic's over. And so a lot of the resources kind of stopped. The pantries did open up, so I have had access to pantries, but then it became an issue that because the welfare office was so administratively burdened, we were getting sanctioned from mistakes that they were making. So then it was like, hey, your food stamps are cut off. You have to then navigate that whole system on top of navigating, right, the educational institution because they work so separately. So then it became an issue like, okay, now I have access to food, but now I don't have my food stamps to buy this food. So I've struggled with a stable system to accessing my food, but I will say that to pay respects to community college me and what folks are facing in food deserts, I will say that it's nothing compared to what I would face before. And I'm a lot in a much more privileged position now, being affiliated with Cal and having all the resources here as a student. I will say that, again, it just boils down to time poverty because then I'm hitting up all these food pantries, and I'm contacting them. I'm dealing with the CalWorks office. I'm also dealing with school and the rigor of Cal, and just, it becomes an issue where like I have little to no time to do anything or room for mistakes, and that impacts other things. But I will say that my food insecurity has gotten much better, although there are still like just administrative hurdles that I face to access those resources.
And that you're talking about time impoverishment, and then you face childcare challenges that between yesterday and today, and so that just continues to add to it, I'm sure. Jess, you had a different experience, but there's still those hurdles that are faced as like a parent, like we're getting only those few hours of sleep, trying to balance being in class but then being there for your child, especially if they have the health issues and stuff. What was the response you would get from your professors when you would maybe have to miss a class because your child is sick? Or did you get the support you needed on that, or how did that go?
I would say it was split a bit, but I got more support compared to the like non-supportive side. So I realized like with the online, I really didn't necessarily have to tell professors things because it was online. But I would just tell them straight up front, especially because she was so like new to post-surgery. Like the chance of complication is really in that first like 3 months, and then it kind of dwindles down a little bit in the 6 months. But it's like really once you hit that 2-year mark is where things are like much better. So even online, like I would tell them, but in person, I made it a pretty big point of like on the first day of class, I would meet the professor and would just kind of lay out the roadmap of like, here's my daughter's health issues. I will not be on campus before 9 a.m. and I will not leave later than 4 p.m. Like, it doesn't matter what it's for. This is my daughter's schedule. Like, I get her on the bus and I come straight here so I can arrive by 9. I also have to leave by 4 because she gets home by 4:30. And so I need enough time to take the bus, because I would just take the bus from campus to home. And so I would just kind of ask them like, here's the health issues. I hope there's no complications, but there can be. Like, is this okay with you, or should I drop the class? Every professor was, accepting of the like, nope, we can handle that. In my first semester, like, some of the professors are like, well, if you just need to like bring her to class in order to like still be in attendance, like just bring her. And so I was like, okay, because she was 6 years old at the time. So I did bring her to a few classes in order to still make the class. But there were a couple I had to miss for like appointments or because of being sick. And the professors were really understanding about that. I did have an instance in my second semester where like the exams were like 3 to 5. And I was like, I found out kind of like a month in, like I'm pretty sure it was right after the cutoff to drop the class. And so I just kind of approached the professor and was like, you said this wouldn't be an issue. I told you like I leave by 4. You never mentioned late exams. Like, can we bump them 1 hour? Like, can I do mine from 2 to 4? And he made a big fuss about it. And like, he tried getting me to come in at like 7 a.m. or saying like he couldn't bend it. And it did get to the point that I was like, okay, if we can't work this out, I will just have to contact like the appropriate office to figure it out. And then he immediately was like, no, it's fine. So like, it was frustrating that I had to even say like, if there's nothing you're willing to do to work this out, like I'll have to take it to someone else. Because what I was like, he was trying to say he couldn't give it to me earlier because I would give people the answers. But I was like, if you're doing 2 to 4 and they're in the exam 3 to 5, who am I talking to? Like, if your theory was correct, I literally have no access to talk to anyone. I would still be in the exam when they start. So like, him offering me 7 a.m. based on the accusation that I might tell someone was worse than me offering 2 p.m. So like, there was like that complication. And like, during the pandemic, we had a summer semester where she was going through a lot of cognitive testing and to figure out like cognitive aspects of what the hydrocephalus could have affected. And so it was this huge stressor of like dealing with the appointments, but then like the pandemic changed a lot of things. Like, so she should have had the appointments done, but the pandemic impacted them. So they were being rescheduled all in the summer. And so like the emotional stress and toll of that had gotten me like, I think it came down to I missed one lecture, which are all virtual. So like I made it up, but I was trying to be open and honest with him of like, hey, like I had missed one, but I'm making it up. And he basically had just said like how test anxiety is not real and I should utilize my time better. So basically insinuating I should choose my academics over my child, which I was like, that's never going to happen. Like, your class doesn't mean anything to me. If it comes to my child, like, she'll always come first. So like, I did have those couple of instances, and I did have a professor that made it very clear he did not want me in his class over being a parent. So like, and that one was probably the toughest. Like, it caused a lot of anxieties over feeling so rejected and like discriminated against, especially because he was preaching how everyone had to accept his identities, but was rejecting mine. So like, it didn't make sense how he wanted acceptance, but he wouldn't give acceptance. And that was the situation I did take higher up, and it didn't get resolved. And it was kind of like, sucks to suck, buckle up and get through it. And so I think that was probably the hardest impact of like being a student parent that I had experienced on this campus. But thankfully, like most of the other issues were resolvable. Like, they shouldn't have happened, but they were resolvable. But I think outside of the classroom, the biggest hurdle was when I would call for resources and they would say, I would explain the situation of like, so we have a childcare subsidy on our campus, but it only covers licensed childcare. Well, when you're in the heart of a pandemic and childcare centers are closed, and your daughter is 7, you can't utilize childcare. Like, it doesn't exist. Like, it's a pandemic and she's 7. So it basically like disqualified me from any additional support. So like, I was like, I just want to hire her a tutor so she can do school. Otherwise, I'm leaving school so I can teach her. But like, doing both, it's not working, and she needs a consistent schedule. And that was really tough because it was so many staff members on campus just saying, we've never heard of a student like you. We didn't know students like you existed. These are rules for normal student parents. So that had its own thing of difficulties, being like, even though they don't anticipate a student parent, but when they do, they don't anticipate the child to have health issues. And so that sets you apart from existing resources. But yeah, so I think those are really the challenges I had faced. And I would say they all ended up getting worked out though. Like, I ended up getting emergency funding from a different department that covered the tutor for my daughter and things like that. So like, I'm really thankful that it worked out, but it was like disheartening just to experience them.
Yeah, that would be challenging. This is sort of different, but also kind of on the same line, because both of you have mentioned like Jess, you talked about having ADHD in high school. Were you able to get accommodations in college? And then also for you, Kimberly, same thing, like struggling with some of the, I'm assuming, anxiety even around like in class and stuff. Were you able to get those accommodations, or was that like, is that a whole nother Pandora's box that we should talk about in another time?
Yeah, I got accommodations for my ADHD. Those are ADHD accommodations are actually like really easy to get on a university campus, because I want to say like that's one of the only laws that protect a student on campus. But the test anxiety like also was technically accommodated for, but clearly not fully accepted amongst professors. The one professor was the only one to like actually make a comment about it. The others I would be open with were pretty good. And I think because I was only on campus for like 6 months, I think, prior to the pandemic happening. Like once the pandemic happened, you can test in whatever environment you want, in the sense of like you get to be at home. Like, so I would be taking my exam while like eating my chips and listening to music. And I test really well that way because with my ADHD, it's like I need to keep like my hands busy, like kind of like keeping all your senses busy. So it'd be like eating, so keeping my mouth busy, my ears busy for listening to music, and then my brain could just focus on the exam. And so like on campus, it's pretty tough to accommodate that. I did have some professors that would let me listen to music, and like I would just play it on my phone, put it on my headphones, and I'd push my phone like away from me. That way I'd be like, I want to show you like literally nothing's happening. I just need some music. It distracts my mind because otherwise I overthink and I just can't focus on a test. And so I would test in a private room, so only one person would be watching me. Like some of the accommodations would be like, oh, you'd be in a smaller classroom. And unfortunately, that still proved to not be a good environment for me. So I was able to like work it out with the professor where I got my own private testing, and like my test scores improved. And so they were able to see that like that environment was impeding my scores. So that was super easy. But during the pandemic, I then needed accommodations for interruptions from my child. So I was like, when I'm taking the exam and it's 2 hours, well, and if I'm getting poked on the shoulder, 3 different times, like on average, I'm probably taking 15 minutes away from my 2 hours. And so that was something that I actually had a professor accommodate without any like written proof. Like I just kind of explained it to him. And he was able to just give me kind of like the extra 20 or 30 minutes or something like that to accommodate that I was testing with the child in my home. And then the following semester, I was able to get it on like my actual SSB accommodations. They extended it just a little bit to account for disruptions. And so I know it was something they were kind of like, we'll do it this once, but like after the pandemic ends, it wouldn't be anything we would accommodate, but it was enough to get me through my classes. So it helped a lot.
That's really good. How about you, Kimberly?
So when I got DSP services once I came to Cal, but at my community college level, I did not, because I didn't really know that I had suffered from kind of cognitive issues and anxiety. But what really was the turning point for me was, I guess I didn't know most of my life I had like sensory issues, and it was heightened after my daughter was born. And so when she was first born, I was so anxious. I was suffering such deep postpartum anxiety that I started like ripping my hair out. And it got so bad to the point where I shaved my head off, like hair off, because there was just a lot going on. And that was kind of the
You're muted.
Okay, sorry. She was asking me for a perpetual snacker. So she's asking me for her 10,000 snack of the day. So once I came to Cal, I was able to navigate getting accommodations. And so I will say it's been a strange feeling to know that they've been so much more accommodating to my DSP needs versus my student parent needs. And I think the only reason why I've been able to really push to get my needs met in the classroom, like my parent needs met, what is using the avenue of DSP. And so I will say I'm a social science major, so there would be a lot of irony if they didn't understand how institutions are impacting individuals. And so I will say that a lot of the classes that I took had GSIs, or so I've been quick to build rapport and immediately tell them, this is my situation. these are my fears, these are my anxieties. And so I will say that the GSIs have been super accommodating here. The professors, not so much. I've actually had to drop and switch classes because of professors not understanding how being a parent and also being a DSP student could impact during a unprecedented pandemic could impact, and they just were very inflexible. And so I have had to drop classes or switch classes out. Again, I think what's really helped me was my vulnerability with the GSIs to tell them, look, and I've had this one incident where there was this, so I faced a lot of physical and verbal violence from white women here at the university. And so one of my GSIs was a white woman. And so I met with her and I told her, I am terrified of you because of all the violence that I face from white women. I just want to put that out there because that's kind of skewing my sense and ability to ask for these accommodations because I fear the repercussions that I'll face. And so I think I just lead with vulnerability and with the truth of what I faced here. And I think that a lot of the GSIs, being that they're also students navigating this institution, they've been very understanding, accommodating. The professors, I will say, a lot of them have been out of touch with reality and of what students face, especially like myself. And so I will say that I've been fortunate that this institution relies so heavily on GSIs that haven't had to directly always deal with professors. I don't think that my case, I don't think I'd been as accommodated to or as lucky had I just faced professors here. And I will say too that it helps that I am in sociology and the social sciences. So they really, I mean, a lot of their work is in poverty and
that's where
marginalized identity. So that gives them some idea. Again, you'd be surprised at how out of touch and ironic it is when you study this, yet you're perpetuating the same harm that we face in the outside world. But I have been lucky and been able to accommodate my parenting needs through DSP and through just kind of leading with this vulnerability and honesty with GSIs and building a strong rapport.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And that touches on something. We have only about like 12 minutes left, and I do want to open it up for stuff. So the first question that we have is, what's something that was helpful and unexpected for you? Jess started to talk about it. She shared about it in the comments, but why don't you talk a little bit about it, Jess, and then we'll open it up to you, Kimberly.
Yeah, so I think for me, it was like the most helpful thing was the like verbal and physical acceptance and support from the faculty and staff. I think because like I was realizing there is so much faculty and staff that like didn't necessarily accept it or even just didn't know that student parents were on campus. So the times like I did receive it, it like just completely changed the experience for me. And like it created the people who became my mentors on campus. And like that's how I ended up doing my honors thesis and able to like get access to things that I needed. And honestly was the reason I graduated. I think just like I said, that acceptance and emotional support was by far the most helpful thing. Like as much as I say like financial resources are great, but like if you're at a campus where you're completely rejected, like it's impossible to thrive because all you feel is negativity. So I'm glad like that I was able to have that acceptance and able to have those people who were building me up and telling me, you know, like it is possible, like having a child is not a barrier. Because I was starting to feel like it was. I was starting to feel like education was really hard with the child. And so really from that acceptance, it helped me thrive and helped me realize like some of it is just people just didn't know. So if you like take the time and just talk to them, like they're even willing to be one of those people who are then accepting the students and being an emotional support. And the most expected thing for me was just the lack of knowledge. So like resources did exist on my campus. People just literally did not know. Like as far as even advisors not knowing, like I was really surprised that even advisors were not aware of the extent of resources. So I think because of that, like there's constantly so many students that miss out on resources because no one knows to tell them that it exists because they don't know themselves. So like when I first started working here, that was one thing that I really worked to change. I just sent every department a list of resources, and it was just like, hey, I just want to let you know, like in case you like meet any students like this, here's the resources. Like if you'd like to print it out, feel free to. Like if you want me to print it out and bring it to the office, if there's any resources I can bring to your department and you want to display them, like I'm happy to do whatever to support the different departments having these resources. But it was really surprising because even though I didn't really know any student parents here, except for like I knew my husband was a student parent and one of my best friends was a student parent, but they were both like graduated by the time I truly started here. Like I didn't actually meet anyone in the classroom that was a student parent. So even though I didn't meet them, I was still so surprised that like there definitely was the existence of student parents, and staff and faculty still didn't know because I just had assumed if you work here, you would know the student exists. So that was probably the most unexpected thing for me. And then even the rules with resources, like the childcare subsidy is available, but it's very limiting. Like, why would you not allow it to be accepting of all student parents? Like, how is there a resource for student parents that doesn't cover all student parents? I was so unexpected. That was such an unexpected thing for me. It was like, you have it, but not everyone can access it. So I was shocked in the just limitations, but they're like things are improving on that aspect, which is really amazing because I don't think resources should ever be limited from someone.
That's helpful. Thank you. Kimberly.
Again, the question is, what was something that was helpful?
That was helpful. Yeah, and then something
Okay.
that was unexpected for you.
I will talk about this until my face is blue. We have an amazing student parent center here, and it is the student parent kind of, I guess, advisor is Tommy, and he always goes up to bat for us, and we come to him, and he was also a student parent here, and so he understands exactly what it is that we face. And so he's done such a great job at integrating student parents, paying them, and also treating us like we're the professionals, like we're the ones that know this place in and out. And so he has been great at building community with other student parents. There is a big student parent population. I mean, right, like research shows there's 1 in every 5 students is a student parent, and you see that here at Cal. There's little ones walking around. Like I will say that the environment here, because of the student parent, is very like kid friendly. And so that's been something that's been so helpful, where I'm 6 hours away from my family, and I had an incident where this woman punched me on the bus because she was upset that I brought in a stroller. And so the shock when I got off campus and being able to come to people and like cry and be like, I don't know what to do. My daughter was with me there. Like I was just, the support that I got from it via the Student Parent Center has been really helpful. Also knowing that I can like bring her here, and for the most part, my daughter is like safe when, we don't have childcare. That's been more like really helpful. Like I will say, I'll give Cal its flowers that because of the Student Parent Center and because of Tommy and because of all the like fighting they've done to exist here on campus and expand here on campus, it's built a really strong community within this like student parents, and that's been crucial to like my survival. I will say that what's been unexpected is, again, the irony that Cal is supposed to be one of the most liberal institutions with the most resources. And right, as Californians, we have tiny violin like from all our problems because it's such a like well-resourced state. But at the same time, a lot of those resources aren't hitting the most marginalized populations that it should be. And so I will say that we are only thriving because of the student parents like the student parents actual advocating and the labor done by students and like a few people. And I will say that it was unexpected for me to see how like out of touch professors are, out of touch a lot of higher ups are. In one hand, they're talking about there being the most liberal institution, right, in the nation, and on the other hand, the like I have faced more physical, emotional, like violence here than I have in LA in a, you know, dangerous community and upbringing. So it's just this weird split between like I'm living both my best
It's like
and
a
worst life here. Yeah. And so I think that that was really unexpected for me, was that I came here thinking, oh my God, I'm safe and I'm going to be taken care of. And this, and that has been the case, but only because of very burnt out student parents and a burnt out organization has been like fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting for me. And the more, you know, well-off resourced professors and top heads have been the one to cause me this harm. So again, it's just really complicated for me to even process still and to verbalize that, but that's been what's most helpful and unexpected.
Great. Those are all really helpful things. Oh, we have one more question and we only have like 3 minutes left. So real quick, and then I want to do this question like what, like two, like 1 or 2 sentence answer, and then the final one will be another 1 or 2 sentence like popcorn question. Is the first question is, would love to hear both of your thoughts on how universities could educate their professors. And I'm sorry that we could have this conversation probably for hours on end. But just wanted to get that question answered real fast. And then the final one is, when, like, for everyone who's here today, what is the one thing you want them to walk away with? So like, just again, like a quick 1 sentence thing, so we don't take up too much more time. So
Yeah, so I read the question. At our university, there is definitely encouragement to work with professors and help share resources and information. But a lot of them are also taking the initiative to want to learn how to help their students better. So we have like a faculty, staff, and allies group through CEW where we partner with faculty and staff on campus to just help work with them, teach them. They can let us know, like, what are you seeing in the classroom? What would you like to change? Like, what would be useful? How are you supporting students? So it's definitely in the works. And there's a lot of interest on the faculty side. What I would like people to take away is just always being supportive of student parents, always like be willing to hear someone out and like don't cast judgment. Because like I've definitely got the who's taking care of your daughter if you're a student, as if we're not a 2-parent household and the other parent is not allowed to help take care of her. So, you know, just don't cast judgment because you don't really know what the person's going through, and encourage people to go back to school. I always tell people, if I can do it, I believe everyone can do it, because I had the odds stacked against me and I graduated with honors. So I think it's made for everyone. Everyone is able to do it. They just have to be willing to put in the work and encourage each other, be uplifting.
thank you. Kimberly?
I think what's something the university can do to help professors like educate about the student parent population is as simple as having this kind of all department meeting, and most of them are parents. And so just having a very frank conversation about, if you understand what comes with parenthood, because you're a parent and you're a professor, translate that as into, imagine being a parent and a student, and put yourself in those shoes. I think it's really difficult for someone to want to help until there's an emotional investment there, or there's like this mirrored experience that they see, like, oh, I've experienced this in one way, I can come up with solutions of how I would have wanted to have been helped in that moment and reciprocate that. So I think sometimes we make it this complex, complicated thing, and it really is about most of the professors here are parents. You understand day in and day out. Had parents tell me like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, I have to bring my child in today, and in that same breath say, but your exam is due this day, no ifs, ands, or buts. So it's just this irony that I'm existing in sometimes here at Cal. So as easy as just getting the university to get a department meeting together and say, hey, you know what, half of you here are parents, how are you accommodating, and holding them accountable to how they're accommodating so far student parents and what they can do to be better. And then the last thing is, sorry, give me a minute. And the last thing is remembering that we're human. I think that my experience as a student parent has been very dehumanizing.
I think we'll leave it on that note. I know she probably has her hands full right now. The patience is significant for a 5-year-old for an hour. So Kimberly, tell your daughter thank you.
Of course, again, thank you for being so understanding, and also just to humanize our experience. We're people, and we'll always be people, and to kind of prioritize our humanity.
Thank you to the both of you. Like there are not enough words for me to thank the two of you for taking time out of your really busy schedules and just sharing with us about your experiences. Kimberly, I hope that you have a safe rest of your experience at Berkeley. I'm so sorry that that's what you've had to face. But yeah, thank you for all the time you've taken to chat with us today, and just really, like, I don't know what else to say. Thank you is not enough, but we very much appreciate you, and you both are like powerful, strong women that are going to make such a difference, and your kids are lucky to have you as their mom. So thank you both. And on that, we want to thank everyone for attending, and look forward to seeing everyone and talking to everyone later. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.